Cool. All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me in your group. I'm really excited for this.
Good morning. Are we recording now?
We're recording.
Cool. So good afternoon from, well, late afternoon. It is 4 o'clock in the UK. And what time is it there for you, Madsen?
It is about 9 a.m. So it's crazy that we can connect like this.
I know, crazy. Thank you ever so much.
No problem.
I'm so blessed to have you on here. I've been following you. I don't know how long I've been following you, but I mean, you probably can't tell because you've got like 18 million followers. But I think it's got to be, it's over a year. It's into the years anyway.
Yeah.
And a lot of your posts stick out and resonate for me. And I do share a lot of yours because there is so much resource and you give a lot of free stuff away. And like, it's amazing. And you can tell that you're very experienced.
Thanks.
So I just wanted to introduce you as a formal introduction. Dr. Madison Oak, vestibular physical therapist, treats all forms of vestibular disorders. Mm-hmm. Could you just explain how you got into this? How did it all start for you?
Yeah, so I am from California. I moved to Wisconsin, which if you're not familiar with American geography is very far, to the Midwest for graduate school. And I was in the midst of a culture shock, but I was like, I'm going to go to PT school. I'm really excited. It's a great PT school. And when I got there, the woman who designed the neurological track for our school is the woman who also wrote the book on what should be in the neurological track of physical therapy school. So it was thorough and excellent. So I got really lucky with my education and my training. And I chose the school very intentionally, knowing it was an excellent institution, but also getting lucky in that she was very much into vestibular training. And if you ask anyone from my graduate school, any 40 of them, what is Madison going to be when she graduates? They would say she's going to work in inpatient pediatrics at a hospital. Full stop. That clearly didn't happen. So I had an internship. I wanted to live in Austin, Texas for one of my internships. I had free rent down there. So I was like, yes, let's do that because they're unpaid internships. And I was like, I need a place to live. So I went down to Austin, and the only internship they had down there was at 360 Balance and Hearing at the time. It's Balance and Dizziness now in Austin. And Bridget Wallace and a woman named Alex and a woman named Kendall were my clinical instructors, and they were excellent. All I did all day, every day was see people with vestibular disorders. I'm talking neuritis, BPPV, triple PD, VM, Meniere's disease, you name it, it was there. SCDS, whatever you have, I saw it. And I was like, okay, this is a new world. And like I had some like, this is how you do VOR ×1. This is how you do cancellation kind of stuff in PT school. This is how you do an Epley maneuver. This is when to use it. This is when not to use it. Things like this. But what I didn't know was all of the exact intricacies that are required to be a vestibular therapist. And I did my 9 or 10 weeks there. And by the end of it, they said, okay, you are not fully trained in this. No one who graduates from this program is, but you know more than the average physical therapist, even with 30 years under their belt of regular PT, about vestibular disorders. That's just the way the world works because there's just not a lot of people who do work in the vestibular world. And I said, okay, with that information, I can do what I can do with it. And then I graduated in 2020. So I am technically a new grad. I graduated in 2020 in the pandemic, and I got a job right before the pandemic started. And it was at a clinic where the guy said, I do not hire new grads. And I said, I promise you, just give me an interview. I know about the vestibular system, I promise. And he said, okay, fine, I'll talk to you. You seem like a nice new grad, whatever. And he's, oh my gosh, I have not met someone who has 30 years of experience with that much knowledge about the vestibular system. And I said, I told you. I hate to say I told you so, but I also love it. Will you please give me this job? So he did. I worked at that clinic. I loved it. It was a gorgeous clinic. And then my partner and I decided that we were going to move to Jackson, Wyoming, which is where I live now. So I've lived really all over the country. That clinic was in New York City. I've lived in, I think, like 8 states in 7 years, like ridiculous amount of places. I've loved the experiences. We're really happy to be in Jackson now. And from there, I was like, well, I can't work at this clinic anymore because I don't have a clinic, right? I'm not going to live in New York forever. And so I started my own clinic, and My partner, now fiance, he was like, you know what, I think you've got something here with at the Vertigo doctor. And it's kind of funny how that started, because it was in the pandemic and I kept talking to him about dizziness, and he's like, I'm not dizzy. You got to do something with this information that isn't just telling me about it. Like, he's like, here's how to build a, he's in technology. He's like, here's how to build a website. Here's how to start an Instagram account. Please go do that. So I did that, and it's kind of just grown and blossomed from there. And now I have a telehealth clinic. I see patients in 6 states, and my counterpart sees patients in 2 states. So we really cover a lot of the country. And then I run an international group program, which a lot of people from the UK, Australia, India, the States, all over the world are in and joining. And it's all the things that your doctor forgets to tell you about your vestibular system and more. So it's everything wellness, not medical advice, but education, wellness, movement, exercise, mindset, anxiety, all the things that you would need to recover from your vestibular disorder in one place. So that's
and that is called Group Fit,
Vestibular Group Fit.
Vestibular Group Fit.
Yeah.
And is that a Instagram or Facebook or both, or is it a Facebook group or?
Yeah, so it's a Facebook group, and it's also on my website. So the back end of my website is getting redone right now, which I'm really excited for. So we're about to get a new website that when you log in, it has you take a quiz and it directs you to specific modules and things like that for learning, which I'm really excited about. And the Facebook is like a support group, and then exercise classes, which range everything from ballet to strength training, Tai Chi, yoga, Pilates. We've truly got it all in there. Those are aired every single morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time, which is around 4, because it will be 2 hours ago. So 2 o'clock UK.
Don't ask me, I'm rubbish at things.
No, it's 2 o'clock UK time. I know.
I just know it's UK time. I have no idea about any
airs daily, and they're recorded always so that you are able to watch the class at any time. And you can choose kind of how to modify the class based on what the teacher is saying. And so it's available and accessible whether you can't get off the couch or you've been training and exercising for years. It is accessible to every single person. And that was really my goal.
Anybody can join.
Anybody can do it. Anybody can join, anybody can do it. And average vestibular therapy is going to cost you $200 to $300 a session. This is less than $60 a month. So that was my goal, was to make it as accessible and affordable as humanly possible.
And is it for people that are undiagnosed and just on the diagnosis path, as well as people who have been diagnosed?
Yes. So the new questionnaire that's starting in August, so in a couple of weeks, it's going to ask you, do you have a diagnosis? And you can click none of these. And if you click none of those, it will take you on a different track where you watch videos about different diagnoses and which ones you might have.
Right. Okay. My God, well, that's an amazing resource and somewhere that people can go. I mean, I know, obviously the value of support groups is amazing. I started mine in 2017, Mummy Seeing Double Support on Facebook. And it's just been wonderful. It's like a family. It's somewhere, a safe space. There's no judgment. There's no negativity. There's just somewhere that they can go. Because a lot of people actually that started with me, I don't know if it's still the case, they have hidden their vestibular symptoms and disorders from their family and friends because they just, I don't know, I know what it's like. I hid them for a long time. And it's just a place where people completely understand, what it's like to have these debilitating disorders, and somewhere you can get support and advice and tips. I have found over the years, groups can be sometimes a negative and a positive in a way, like when you're in a big relapse, like I used to be, I didn't have lots of groups. I didn't have any groups when I was, so I've had this for 13 years. There was nothing back then. There might be a few forums that scare story.
It's definitely different now.
Yeah. And so I do say to my group, that it's how you use it. You can use it however you want to use it. You can dip in, you can just be a onlooker, you can get involved, you can use it for resource, or you can come off when you want to, come back in. It's when you're in the relapse, sometimes being reminded constantly of a vestibular support group can trigger, but then
absolutely
most of the time it is very, very useful.
So the support group function in Vestibular Group Fit has been designed so that we have to approve posts, and the posts that are in the main group are questions. So like, I'm having a hard time with this, I'm having a hard day with that, what do I do? And then if you're having a hard day and you just need to vent, because that's very valid and that's something that definitely needs to happen, there's a separate chat group called Healing is Never Linear that's within the group, but it's separated from the main page. So you can click onto it or not click onto it if you want to see it or not see it, depending on kind of the day you're having, things like this. Because sometimes people are like, I don't want to see that. Like I'm having a really couple good weeks. And if I see something that's negative, it's going to trigger me. And so that's kind of how Vestibular Group Fit manages that, which I think has been really helpful and safe. And some people have said, well, I'm having a really bad day and sometimes seeing only wins is really hard. So I let through some stuff and I moderate the page very intentionally, I should say.
Yeah, that's really good, because you've just hit the nail on the head there with sometimes seeing negative things is triggering, but also actually seeing people that are constantly doing really well and actually progressing can be really quite depressing for the person who's in you know, the phase, the chronic phase or a relapse, and say, well, why aren't I improving? What am I doing that's wrong?
Yeah.
And,
You're not doing anything wrong.
good.
You're not trying hard enough. You've not done something wrong. You just not have found the tools that work for you yet. And I think shifting the mindset from I'm never going to get dizzy again. I can't get dizzy. It's not going to happen for me, to I live with a vestibular condition. It's chronic. I live with this condition, and here are the things that I can do to support my body when I'm having a dizzier day. Here are the things that I do when I have to use a computer for a long time. Here are the things I do when the weather changes. And if you can kind of shift from, I hate this so much and I hate my body and I hate what my body is doing to me, to, you know what? My body is like this. I love and accept my body wholly. Acceptance does not mean that I'm just going to feel like this every day forever. Acceptance means I'm ready to use the tools that are available to me in the year 2023. We have a lot of amazing tools now. I'm willing to use the tools that are available to me to help me through what my body needs support for.
Totally.
I think that shift is really helpful and really important. That's something that we focus on first in group. And group is not something you join for 1 month or a few weeks and all your problems are going to go away. It's kind of when you see these big wins and posts that I put on my Instagram weekly, usually on Wednesdays, those are people who have been doing this for months or for years. Like I went to Disneyland. People have been in the group for 6 months, 8 months, a year. And they're like, okay, now I feel like comfortable doing this. And it's not to say you can't go to Disneyland tomorrow. But the big wins that you see from people, I tend to think that those people have been the people in group for longer and access to tools and things for longer.
Yeah, and that's really interesting what you were saying about sort of, you know, for years I fought and, you know, fight these symptoms, don't want them, it's not quite right. I'm shifting. It's like the anxiety and panic. The more you fight it, the more it comes back, the more it escalates, more it builds. And then I used to get more dizzy, then I used to get more anxious, then I used to get more dizzy. It's like a big loop.
It's a cycle.
And then it took me, I think it was probably the turning point was 2015, probably 16. I started to accept it more, that actually I do have 2 neurological, conditions that are lifetime and that I have to manage. And I remember my consultant at the time saying, you manage them really well. And if you can continue to manage them really well, you'll live in a really good, stable state. And that's why I use, you probably see on my Instagram, I exercise every day, I go walking, I do wellness stuff, I do EFT tapping for neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity.
Your stories today.
Neuroplasticity is not one thing. I'm going to blow my head. I know you know this, but I'm gonna forget.
Totally.
Literally.
And you are so right with the new, and everybody who follows or who doesn't follow the Vertigo Doctor, go to the Vertigo Doctor on Instagram and look at her stories and look at the resources on there, because the stories she puts on, you will resonate straight away. And there are such useful tips like neuroplasticity, and then like the tools, and that we do have to work ourselves at all of this. This is not gonna come on a plate and go, oh, here's a magic pill, but you do need to work at it.
It's just like anything else in your body. Totally. So let's get to some of the questions. I know they're
I've got a lot of questions. I did say in the group earlier that let's see. I don't know how we're going to get
to them. I will rapid fire and be thorough as much as I can.
There was a few questions that came through and I was like, come on, don't be shy, have some. And then suddenly it was like,
that happens.
Right, the first one, it's interesting actually, because I do agree totally that there's a lack of resource around children that have vestibular disorders or symptoms. So
Yes.
this lady or man, I don't know, have Meniere's and vestibular migraines. My 10-year-old son has had a few vertigo episodes this past year. The doctor is leaning towards vestibular migraine diagnosis, a history of migraines. There is very little information about children and vertigo. Any info you provide on children?
So I do not usually see children. That being said, children can have something called just benign paroxysmal vertigo, so BPV, not a second P there. And that is just like quick spins, and it happens to children for some reason. They tend to grow out of it. If you as a mom happen to have a history of migraine, it is likely that your children will also have migraine. If one parent has migraine, there's a 50% chance your child will. If two parents have migraine, 75% chance. So if you remember that like square you drew in grade school about with like the cross, and it's called a Punnett square with genetics, it's basically your child's pretty likely to have it, and migraine is genetically linked. So if your son or daughter or anyone who is a small child that is in your life is starting to have really bad stomach pains that you can't really figure out, head pain, light sensitivity, their brain hurts, frontal headaches are really common in children, and then that kind of vertigo that seems spontaneous, loss of balance, poor vestibular, like they can't really walk with head turns, things like that. Those children often do have vestibular migraine, and it can be diagnosed as young as like 2 or 3. So
Wow.
I'm not a child specialist. I know at the beginning I said that I'd probably work in an inpatient pediatric hospital, but I do not do child continuing education very much. That being said, there's an excellent resource called Migraine at School. And Marina Medvedlentini, who is I love her. She's
Parenting with migraine.
And she awesome resource. She is also working with Migraine at School, and I really recommend that you follow her and ask her questions. She did a module in Group Fit about parenting with migraine. It's so good. I cannot wait to release it. I think it's coming out August, September-ish. But it's legitimately so good. And then we also did a cross post, me and Migraine at School in June during Migraine Headache Awareness Month. Excuse me, you can scroll and find that. So
parenting with migraine, she interviewed me actually. Oh gosh, when was it? I think it was just before COVID, I think. So she wanted to interview me just as a friend on Instagram, and also being a fellow vestie. So yes, I avidly watch her Instagrams. I love them, and again, relatable and amazing resource. So that's really interesting about the Migraine at School. So anybody who wants to learn more about that can go to Parenting with Migraine.
And I just sent you the cross post that Migraine at School and I did, so you can post that. I just sent it to your Instagram.
Brilliant. Excellent. I'll put all this resource up anyway. The second question is, have you had any experiences with the newer migraine injections helping in vestibular migraine and triple PD? Now, I can't pronounce it. Is it
Emgality, Ajovy, and Amavig.
Ajovy.
So there's four at this time. Different injections. So there's the monthly injections. Those are your Emgality, Amavig, and Ajovy. Vyepti is quarterly, and it's an IV infusion. And I don't know what's available in the UK and what's not. These are the ones that are available to my patients in the States. So those are the 4 that I recommend for people, and they're just differently recommended depending on the person. As a physical therapist, I don't tell them exactly what to do. I say, these are your options, go to your doctor and decide which one's best for you, right? And that's what you should be doing anyway. So even though I am a doctor, don't trust a doctor on the internet for your information, right? Trust your doctor for your healthcare situation. So this is what I tell patients, is that migraine is an umbrella term for a lot of different symptoms that sit on a spectrum. So if you have a migraine diagnosis, whether or not you're having an attack, whether or not you're having symptoms, you have migraine 24/7, 365. Even if you're in remission, you still have migraine. It's like someone with asthma has asthma attacks, right? They still live with asthma, and sometimes it flares if they have exercise-induced asthma or cold-induced asthma or whatever. Just like that, you have migraine all the time. Now, vestibular migraine is on the spectrum of migraine. There's MUMS, there's hemiplegic migraine, there's classic migraine, there's ocular migraine, there's all these different kinds of migraine, but they're not subtypes. They live on a spectrum. And a lot of my patients have ocular migraine and vestibular migraine, classic migraine and vestibular migraine, what have you. Okay. If you have vestibular migraine, it's treated relatively the same as classic migraine. So you're treating the migraine, you're not treating the vestibular symptom when it comes to treating the migraine itself. When you're having an attack and you want a rescue medication, an acute medication, something like that, then yeah, you're treating the vestibular symptom. Like you're taking a Valium, you're taking a meclizine, right? A person with classic migraine wouldn't be taking meclizine or Dramamine because they don't get dizzy. But someone with dizziness, they're going to treat the dizziness symptom when the attack comes on. But when you're treating the migraine itself, you're just treating the umbrella of migraine, which responds well to those CGRPs, which are those injections. People with migraine have extra CGRP and they can't process it very well. And so that's what leads to migraine attacks, is what we're finding more and more of. The cause of migraine is that you live with a neurovascular neurological disease. And that is the cause of migraine. And then the triggers of migraine are different things that flare you. The weather could trigger you. Allergies could trigger you, but that's not the cause of migraine. We're treating the cause of migraine at its root source, which is neurovascular disease, if that makes sense.
Mine was triggered, well, whether it was 100% triggered, but it was a bit coincidental, straight after the birth of my twins.
That happens all the time.
Yeah, so whether that was
giant crash of
hormonal,
hormones.
yeah,
I have so many patients.
And because with twins, the hormones have to go that much higher because there's two babies. And that was the theory of my vestibular consultant at the time in 2010.
I see it all the time.
That, you know, that's when I got it, 2010, when my periods started coming back, actually. That's when I got it.
Yep, that's really when the estrogen starts doing this. So people who have hormonally related migraine, they usually have it during ovulation and right before their period, because those are the 2 times a month.
Mine's worse with ovulation,
Yep, right when your estrogen drops. So your estrogen drops during that time, and again during this time, and it goes up when you're not ovulating and when you're not on your period. And when it's up, your body's all happy because serotonin and estrogen have a direct relationship with each other. And so you drop in serotonin, migraine happens to increase. So it's never just one thing, is what I say. And people can manage hormonal migraine pretty well by doing, some people take vitamin E, some people do seed cycling, some people do extra triptans as their long-acting triptans as their period starts. Some people do all kinds of different things, extra Gammacore, extra Cephaly, whatever works for you during that time. Because if you can increase your migraine threshold, the hormonal issue, you'll have more room to wiggle room, basically. You'll have more room to wiggle in here if you can increase the migraine threshold as a whole.
Amazing. This actually leads on to our next, because we were just mentioned, you mentioned estrogen. And I'm of the age where it's
really doing this,
really, it's not good. And the next question is not mine, but it's one that I probably would have asked. Please, could you ask her if she thinks there is a link between VM and HRT? And obviously, there are different forms of HRT. I mean, just to give you a heads up of what happened with me, I started HRT because my symptoms just got too strong to ignore. And the doctor was like, menopause doctor was like, right, let's get you on the estrogel. We'll start 20th of December. By the February, it had flared up my endometriosis, because I have endometriosis. And when I used to get a big flare of endometriosis before my first laparoscopy, my vertigo then flared up. Now, I think I mentioned to you a little while ago that I'm doing some work with the local hospital audiology department on the link between women's estrogen, women's endometriosis and things like polycystic ovaries, cysts, urinary infections, things like that, as a link between, because they're seeing a lot more people coming through with those typical endometriosis, everything like that, and vestibular migraines. So have you seen any particular link between VM and HRT?
So HRT can be either really positive for some people or really negative for some people, and you will not know until you try. It's just like any other treatment. It's going to work super great for some people, work terribly for other people, and there's something called number needed to treat. And this exists with any medication, any therapy, anything. And that basically means the number of people that need to try a treatment before it works for one person.
Yeah.
Lifestyle changes, the number is 2. But for a medication like an SSRI, the number can be 36, 100, 9. It really depends on the medication. So that means 36 people are going to have to try this before it works for one person. And that's why lifestyle changes are so effective, because each lifestyle change, you need 2 people to try it for it to work for one. So it's a pretty high chance it's going to work pretty well for you. Now, HRT is a kind of therapy, hormone replacement therapy. And when your hormones are doing this, sometimes you can kind of add in a hormone and make it be like this every day. So you have more estrogen, you have more progesterone, you have more whatever one your doctor decides you need. And you can do it in a patch, you can do it in a gel, you can do it in the form of birth control, you can do it in an IUD, you can do it in lots of different ways. And it just depends on your age, your needs, your specific things. Do you also need birth control? Okay, maybe let's try a low estrogen one over here. Do you not need birth control anymore? Are you having also vaginal dryness? Sometimes those creams and gels are better ideas. There are different things that you can try depending on your age and your season of life. Now, your needs, again, are going to be different than the next person's needs, and it's probably going to take some trial and error to determine which thing is which for you. Now, if you have a history of endometriosis, PCOS, these different things, it's going to be maybe a little bit more touchy for you. And that's where you need both your headache specialist and also you need your gynecologist to talk to each other would be ideal. I know that's hard to do, but if
that was the plan, and it was difficult.
The plan, it's always the plan, doesn't always work. But if you can get it to work, it works wonders. It's phenomenal. So definitely giving that a shot as well. And yeah, I think it's always worth a try. Some people are like, God, it made me feel so much worse. Okay, not the treatment for you. But also I find clinically that people with migraine are hypersensitive to all treatments. And so start with 1/4 of a pump of estrogen gel, right? Rather than saying, I'm going to do 2 pumps of this, like it comes in a pump thing, do a little bit rather than a lot and build up and build up. You could do the same thing for medications. Like I know people who take the capsule form of Effexor and they take literally like the beads out of it and take like 10 beads, right? Do not do this without your doctor's approval, just because I am saying some people do it. Some people that's not the right thing for, but there are different ways you can kind of wean up and wean down to titrate different medications and treatments. And that's always a good idea, I think.
Yeah, I unfortunately had to come off it because my vertigo got so bad.
That happens to people too. So it's going to be one of those things.
It was a shame because my family felt that I was better on it with my mood swings, but we're dealing with it. I'm gonna have to, as you said, I'm just gonna have to just try and work that through with the menopause doctor I've got, and
there you go,
my vestibular guy. So there's a question here about any tips on flying, and there's actually 2 questions about this. Can VM be worsened by flying? And they've not flown since the first episode 4 years ago, and I'm dreading it. I get so many messages.
I get so many about flying. I get so many messages.
I literally, because I travel a lot now, I never used to be able to, but because I'm less chronic, I'm managing my disorders very, very well. I then transitioned to just building up. I used to do short flights, then medium flights. I'm sorry, swore then. Excuse me. Actually, my group will know that I swear, actually. But anyway, so medium flights and also long haul flights. So I've built up to long haul.
Yeah.
And last year was the first year I did like an 11-hour flight, which was just amazing.
Awesome.
So I've written a blog for Vestibular Disorders Association about this. But what's your take on flying?
I had a post yesterday about activities. There is nothing in this world that you cannot do with the vestibular disorder. I will caveat that and say, if you have uncontrolled Meniere's disease, driving is technically illegal in the States. Other than that, there is nothing you cannot do with the vestibular disorder. And I stand by that statement. If you want to do something, whether it is you want to go to Disneyland, you want to go on a cruise, you want to fly a long haul flight, you can get there. You just need the right tools to do it. So those tools may be earplanes, which are the earplugs some people
I
love.
love those.
Airplanes, some people love them. Some people like didn't make a difference. Great. Now you know they're $20 on Amazon. Sometimes people want to chew ginger candy. Some people want to take Xanax beforehand. Some people want to try a short haul flight before a long haul flight. Some people want to make sure their migraine threshold is up. Here, 100% of my one-on-one patients, who I only see the most chronic, most debilitating people with dizziness, that's it. 100% of them fly. So I want you to know that. I have yet to have a patient who cannot fly, if that's their goal, right? And I would say that I put them on a train first. I made sure they could drive first. I made sure they could be in the back of an Uber first. And then after that, they're like, okay, I want to go see my cousins in Cleveland. Great. Let's book that flight. When's the flight? Next month? Okay. Every day until next month, you're going to do these things. You're going to pack 2 weeks early. You're going to bring baggies that you can ask the gate agents to fill up with ice for you. So if you have head pain, you're going to make sure you have your water bottle and you're going to fill it up. Make sure you have water. You're going to bring yourself safe snacks. There's just a lot of preparation that goes into it. We have a whole module in Vestibular Group Fit about it. And I have a blog post about it. I have a blog post on vestibular.org about it. Sounds like you do as well. And then even more information in the module and group. And it's something that's important to understand, is that living with the vestibular disorder does not mean your life is over. And I think that people think a lot about like travel as a big part of their life, because traveling to see people on the other side of the world, the other side of the country, we live in a lot of weird places, right? And traveling is a big part of life these days. And so I've had people get back on cruises before and come off no issue. And can flying make your symptoms a little bit worse? Yeah, for sure. But it's about that shift that we kind of talked about in the beginning. I have this disorder. It makes it a little bit more difficult for me to fly. When I fly, I don't feel 100%. And so maybe I shouldn't schedule a 15-mile hike for when I land. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe when I land, I'm going to plan to land in the afternoon. I'm going to book myself a good flight, plan to land in the afternoon. I'm going to go for a short walk, have dinner, make sure I'm dehydrating, or flying makes you so dehydrated, making sure I'm having electrolytes, lots of water, and then I'm just going to go to bed. I'm going to sleep it off and get up the next day, do something little.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've adopted. I mean, when I always factor in a day of rest on the other side. However, because I've been with my particular symptoms, if I sit around for a long time, especially the long haul flight of 11 hours, I'm sitting around all that time. Yeah, I do try and get up now and again.
Definitely.
Getting up and walking up and down, even if I don't need the loo. Then when I land, I do try and slowly walk around just to compensate again. Because if I go into a hotel room and then say, right, guys,
always take a walk.
Bed,
always take a walk.
Up. Yeah, just a little walk, really gentle, just round the room or round the hotel. That's it. And then, you know, I've managed to adopt that. And then obviously my blog mentions about certain things that have helped, like the cancelling out noise things and the light sensitivity of airports and stuff. So everyone is so different, as you say. You just got to adopt what helps you in those situations, isn't it? I think the main thing is the lack of sleep for me.
The airport, definitely taking a walk. I'm totally with you. And I had a friend fly to India for a wedding recently, and she's like, I woke up, she's like, I took a Xanax, I passed out for 8 hours. There was still 10 more hours on this flight. Like, it's the longest flight I've ever been on. And like, I woke up, that flight is long. So I woke up and I was like, oh my God, there is a man in front of me doing lunges. And I was like, do lunges with him. Like, it's not, no one thinks it's weird. She's like, at first I thought it was weird. And then and she has really severe migraine. And she's like, then at first I thought it was real weird. And then I was like, I can do my migraine exercises, my PT game. I'm doing my neck exercises. I'm stretching. I'm getting up. I'm doing my core engagement. I'm doing squats. And I was like, 100%. It's not bad or weird. It's okay. Do whatever it is that you need to do.
I think my teenage children would be so embarrassed if I start doing my Pilates in the aisle of the aeroplane in 2 weeks. The stress. But you know, you can do basic stuff. You can do
basic stuff. You don't need to be laying on the floor. It's kind of gross. But like squats, knee bends, lunges. I mean, really long haul flights, depending on you, your blood, your age, can actually cause blood clots in your calves. You want to be doing calf raises. You want to be moving around. Blood pools in our ankles. It happens, especially when there's less gravity, less pressure, stuff like that. And so getting up and moving is really important. It's great. You should do more of it.
I think you've hit the nail on the head again. Is basically, you, just because you've got vestibular disorders doesn't mean you can't do stuff. I think the main thing, as I know with my mental illness side, that was kicked off and triggered by the vestibular disorder. Never had anxiety before, never had depression before, never had PTSD before. It was all kicked off as soon as this all started. And I think the fear and the anxiety stops you from doing all these things. It stops you. It's like a barrier. It's kind of like, but the more you do it, the more little baby steps get you there. And, smaller flights, smaller train journeys, smaller car journeys, smaller this, and just build up, smaller walking, and then just,
I think that there's a barrier, right? And then today I'm going to do it, right? And then you go drive for 25 minutes and then you're like, that made me sick. I'm never doing that again. But in reality, you need to just start with a driving video, sitting in your car, watching the driving video, drive around your block one time, come home, do grounding, drive around your block another time, So you need to go in these baby steps. And I think it's important to understand that it's like a hamstring tear, and no one thinks about it this way. Even the physical therapist, this is how we're trained. We're trained to think hamstring tear. What was this person doing before? Running marathons. What is this person doing now? Hamstring tear, can't run at all. Okay, we're going to rehab the hamstring tear. Then we're going to do a return to run on an unweighted treadmill. Then you're going to slowly weight them more and more. Then we're going to let them run on the grass for 100 meters. Then we're going to let them do 200 meters, 300 meters, 400 meters. And then we're going to be, okay, now you can run a mile, slowly, run, walk. Then it's 2 miles. Then you're going to go couch to 5K. Once you get to that 5K, you're going to be consistent about that. You're going to do a 10K. You're going to be consistent about that. Back to marathon training. And you're going to train your core. You're going to train your legs. You're going to train that hamstring. You're going to make sure you have quad strength. You're going to make sure you have jump strength. You're going to make sure you have all of these different things. You're not just going to go run a marathon. And a vestibular disorder is no different. And this is something that I really get going about, because it really makes me mad that your PTs, your doctors, your people in your life don't think about it this way. And it's not your fault. Your doctors didn't think about it this way. You don't have a PT education. You wouldn't know. But this is how you think about that. It's exactly the same as any other injury or illness or issue you've ever had. If you cannot drive, and you have not been driving for months and driving makes you dizzy, you have to start with once around the block, just like you would start with walking again on an unweighted treadmill. And
actually driving is a big thing, like all my group. It's, I mean, I had a dizzy attack on the M25 motorway here, 2013, and it caused me PTSD after and panic disorder. And ever since then, I've had a block, and I find it really difficult to get out of my driveway. But I do know, and you've reinforced it to me, I know it's the anxiety stopping me, because actually I can be a passenger in a car and I cannot be dizzy. So if I can be a passenger in a car focused
being a passenger is harder than driving. Fun fact.
And actually
harder than driving.
Ask my husband. I mean, literally I'm going braking, stop, left, right. I'm like, I might as well drive. He's like, for God's sake, will you just get driving again? But, I think it's because it's been so long me out the drive. I have been trying to practice. And as you say, it's just practice. It's just repetitive practice.
It's small, really small. Don't just go drive to the motorway. That's a bad idea. It's going to cause panic again. It's going to reinforce that. And we don't have time to get into this, but read the book called The Way Out by Alan Gordon. It is a book about chronic pain. But every time he says the word pain in that book, it's audiobook. I listen to it on one plane flight. It's 4 hours long. It's not long. And replace it with your symptom rather than the word pain if you don't have pain. If you have pain, great. Use that word as well.
Well, that's my audiobook sorted out for 2 weeks time.
It is phenomenal read. It is truly life-changing. I have almost everyone in vestibular group read it. It will change your life. It changed my life.
I'll put these links. I'll make sure that I get them correct.
All right. Next question. I don't want to run out of time.
Next question. Yes. So we've done the flying. POTS. So POTS with the heart rate thing. Is it linked to VM? Someone's asked.
So POTS is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. It is not my blood pressure just drops when I stand. Different.
Yeah.
POTS is a lot of people are like, well, I have POTS because my blood pressure drops. No, that is called orthostatic hypertension. Different thing. You can have both, but POTS is when you stand up and your heart rate goes tachycardic. And basically, when you look at like an EKG, it looks different and it will stay tachycardic for 10 minutes or more. And so a lot of people have trouble being upright, even in sitting positions, because their autonomic nervous system isn't sending the right signal. When you stand up, your heart rate should go up a little bit, your blood pressure will drop a little bit, it's normal, and then they should regulate themselves. This is normal. But what's not normal is your autonomic system cannot regulate itself. And because migraine is a neurological disorder with your nervous system, so is POTS. People more frequently have both. I've treated a couple of people with POTS. It's definitely not my specialty. Emily Rich OT is great for POTS. She has POTS and she posts a lot of free cool stuff about POTS as well. I really like her a lot. But she is a better resource for POTS than I am. I treat people with POTS only when they also have vestibular migraine. But if you suspect you have POTS and you have a difficult time exercising upright, we actually have POTS specific classes in Vestibular Group Fit taught by a person who treats a lot of POTS. Her name is taught by a person who treats POTS. Her name is Trinetta Bajwani. She works in, I think, Ontario, Canada. She's fantastic. And she is our POTS low intensity specific vestibular group fit instructor. So VGF is still a place for you if you have POTS and VM. Yeah.
Okay. I think you did a post actually recently, I think it was like a day or so ago on your blog, and it was about the neck. I have this.
Yes.
So my specialist had always said my VM wasn't linked to my neck, but I'm definitely more dizzy, and have more drop attacks, vertigo, if my neck muscles are tight and shoulders. I'm having treatment for my neck at the moment, and it's made such a difference. So there is a link, surely.
Yes,
and you
so
up on that.
So migraine is a neurological disorder that we treat in just the brain. We only think about it here, but we need to stop that. We need to stop treating migraine from here up. We need to treat migraine as a whole body experience. Your whole entire body experiences migraine when you experience migraine. Your neck we call it your cervical spine, right? That's the neck part of your spine. And when you think about your neck, you think about the trigeminal nerve, you think about your cervical nucleus, you think about your vestibular system, you think about all this stuff. But basically, in very the most simple terms I can put it is migraine. The migraine nerve that we talk most about is your trigeminal nerve. It's right here and right here on either side of your face. There are 3 branches, and these 3 branches, that's why people get like ice pick pain. That's why people get like toothache pain with jaw pain, different stuff like that. That is your trigeminal nerve. And migraine is caused by what's called a cortical spreading depression. It's a series of really high activity, and then that drop off of that activity triggers a migraine. So when that happens, the trigeminal nerve is triggered, and it causes a lot of pain. For people who don't have pain, I will explain you in a second, but for most people, they get that pain. That will triangulate with your trigeminal cervical complex and cause pain and stiffness and tightness, which will then triangulate with your cervical vestibular complex, vestibular migraine. So the 3 of those things kind of go around in a circle. And Dr. Bay explains the exact same thing in his book, Victory Over Vestibular Migraine, which is another great read. It's long, there's an audiobook version. I feel like I should volunteer to read it for him. It's a great book. So what that happens is you get this triangulation between the 3, and that issue, vestibular migraine and regular migraine, that involves your neck.
Yeah.
So when you get dizziness, then if you have migraine, it's already involving your neck. Then when it's already involving your neck, you go, okay, well, my neck hurts, and if I just don't move my neck, plus I'm dizzy, I just won't get dizzy and I won't have so much head pain. And then your neck gets tighter and your shoulders go up and your neck gets tighter and your neck gets tighter. These muscles down here in your back get weak and looser. And then we end up here and we're like, oh my God, now I feel like crap. So your neck is related, but it's a chicken or the egg kind of a situation. Neck pain can trigger a migraine, and migraine can trigger neck pain. The less you move your neck, the worse your neck is going to be. So we have a 6-week neck protocol, which is the same exact one I use with my one-on-one patients, but more generalized. So you can scale it yourself in Vestibular Group Fit. And it'll take you through a 6-week protocol, basically, of what to do with your neck every single day, different stretches, different exercises, different ways to strength train, things like this. And I have heard all positive feedback. People have been like, my neck feels like a different neck. So you need to be strengthening, which seems counterintuitive. A tight muscle is a weak muscle. If you're like, imagine you go like this all the time, you just flex your bicep all day long. If you try even for 30 seconds to flex your bicep, you're like, oh God, that's a lot. I gotta like shake this thing out. But we do this all day with our neck. And this kind of position puts extra strain on your neck back here. It really stresses out this muscle. Every single person in the world has said to me, I have the tightest traps anyone has ever seen. We all have tight traps. It's not good. We need to be kind of sitting in better posture, but posture is not about standing in this position or sitting in this position. Posture is about movement. The better your posture, I guarantee, the more you move throughout the day. You're moving positions out of your chair. You're moving positions within your chair. You're getting up, using the bathroom, getting a snack, getting water, at least every 45 minutes. So the more you move, the better you'll feel. Let your neck move. Don't guard your neck so much. You will feel the difference. And a lot of times we overstrain these big muscles and underuse the teeny tiny muscles inside. And that's what the 6-week neck strength protocol does, is it helps you the inside muscles, basically.
Well, is that a link to that?
It's in Vestibular Group Fit.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's all part of it. Yeah.
So this person's done vestibular rehabilitation in the past, and it didn't really help. How does your plan, your group Fit, work to treat and decrease vestibular symptoms?
Yeah, so I started Vestibular Group Fit after I made a bunch of people with vestibular migraine worse with VRT. I can fully admit to that, and I hope that they find me now, because it is a different program that I would have given someone 3 years ago. When you have a chronic vestibular disorder, specifically vestibular migraine, VRT will make you worse almost every single time. Yeah. Those head shaking exercises will bother your neck, they'll bother your
I'll tell you, it's how I've got my neck problem for 18 months of it.
Too much of that is not good. This exercise, it's for vestibular neuritis.
Yeah, that's what I had it.
Gaze instability. And vestibular neuritis, those like gaze instability symptoms should go away in 6 to 8 weeks. Yes, it can trigger vestibular migraine as well, which then you have a different situation, but the neuritis itself is your brain has loss of function on one side or the other in that vestibular nerve. Your vestibular system sends a signal all the time. It says, I'm looking forward, I'm looking forward, I'm looking forward. When you look to the right one fires more, the left one fires less, and it says, okay, I know where I am in space. When you have vestibular migraine, there's nothing wrong with your peripheral vestibular system, unless you have a history of neuritis, of course, and that's an exception. But generally, most people with vestibular migraine have nothing wrong with their vestibular systems. They're firing and saying, I'm looking forward, I'm looking right, I'm looking left, we're looking up, down, whatever. They know where they are in space, but your brain isn't processing that information. And so Vestibular Group Fit is all of the things that vestibular rehab for migraine should be. And when I see people one-on-one, people are like, well, you're just giving me pretty much the same exercises as in group. I'm like, yes, you are exercising every single day, because that will increase neuroplasticity. And it releases brain-derived neurotropic factor when you do hypertrophying movements and cardiovascular activity. So you need to be exercising. Getting back to exercise is hard, which is why we have VGF, because that is going to help you ramp up to exercise and scale appropriately. It is going to help you strengthen your vestibular system. It's going to increase your serotonin, reduce your anxiety, reduce depression, improve vestibular attacks in general. Meniere's disease alike, okay? All of the things are improved by exercise when it's done correctly. And that's an important factor to remember. Now, vestibular rehab, traditionally, if you have a vestibular therapist who isn't super familiar with a vestibular migraine, is going to prescribe you this for your visual motion sensitivity, this for the gaze instability you may or may not have, this for the gaze instability you may or may not have, and then like weird other exercises that are great exercises. There's nothing wrong with those exercises. They're great. And I am here to tell you, I have also given them to my vestibular migraine patients. But unless that vestibular migraine is so under control and so they are so good at using their toolkit, it's going to make them worse almost every single time. And I have made them worse because when I first graduated, I got handed all of the chronic patients because I liked them. And then they were like, we're getting worse. And I was like, I will do some research. And so I changed the way I practiced. We did more mindfulness, more mindset, more breathing, more grounding, more exercise, more function. They're like, my goal is to drive. Great, let's meet that goal. My goal is to travel. Great, let's meet this goal. Let's make vestibular rehab functional. I don't care if you can whip your head back at 240 beats per minute for 5 minutes in a busy background, if you cannot get to the grocery store. So we need vestibular rehab to be so functional that it's nothing else. And if you're having gaze instability and your gaze is bouncing all the time, 24/7, no matter what, sure, we need VOR ×1, but it's not going to work until the rest of the migraine is under control. And so people say, well, I'm looking for VRT. I have vestibular migraine and I need you to give me VRT exercises. And I am like, no, because I promise you, almost every single time it will not work. And that is where vestibular group fit was born from. It's born from all of the things that you actually need to control your vestibular disorder, all of the things you need to do to get migraine under control, to get your anxiety under control, to get the mindset under control, to do grounding, to do breathing, to do whatever it is. That isn't just shaking your head back and forth, and it will help you be functional, get back to your goals, do whatever you want to do. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because again, I don't care if you can shake your head around if you can't get to the grocery store.
Yeah, I did VRT, and at the time I was very chronic with vestibular neuritis and vestibular migraine.
Yep.
It was a whole world of nightmare.
Yeah.
I went to her every week to tweak it. I did them 3 times a day, 10 minutes each session.
Oh my God.
That's why I've got neck issues. I did them over, I think it wasn't 18 months, about 14 months. It was a nightmare. And actually I've got more out of daily exercise, Pilates, weight training, and my cycling, and actually going out and facing triggers and going to supermarkets, going to restaurants and going and facing lighting and walking. And, you know, I've had more out of that, and mindfulness and, you know, all the tools that you give.
100%. Yeah, it will not work almost every single time. And this is something that drives me up the wall, because it almost every time it will not work. It will make you worse.
And people give up very quickly because they
give up.
Oh my God.
If you have neuritis, please go to vestibular rehab.
Yeah, that's why I had to go. Yeah.
Please do it. It will work beautifully.
Yeah.
It'll be great. If you have Meniere's disease and vestibular loss on one side, it will also work amazingly.
I mean, you're totally right, because I had vestibular neuritis, which is why I got sent there. But the vestibular migraines quickly kicked off. And then that's when you're like,
yep.
It just took ages and ages and ages. If I hadn't had the VM, could have been quicker.
Totally. All right, we're going to be out of time. What's the next question?
Right. I think, I mean, you know, there's a lot of crossover here. There's lots that we've spoken about. There's a few things about anxiety. I think, you know, how do I cope with the anxiety related to the VM? Are there any tips in how to cope with the mental impact? Mental
load. So people with migraine are more likely to have anxiety and depression by, I don't know what percent, I think it's 7 times or something. Don't quote me on that exact.
Very high.
It's high. And this is because there is literally a chemical imbalance. And at the end of the day, we are talking about brain chemistry and gut health. Your serotonin, your dopamine, all that stuff is made in your brain and in your gut. And so gut health is incredibly important. You need to be eating a wide variety of food. My favorite book for this is Fiber Fueled. I have talks on this in Vestibular Group Fit. And then my favorite person to follow about this is Kelly Yates. And a lot of people go on these diets. And I know we're talking about anxiety, but we have to talk about diet if we're also going to talk about anxiety, to eliminate everything from their diet. And I'm here to tell you that if you have no history of any eating disorder, you have no history of anxiety, no history of control issues, then maybe this diet could be good for you. But if you have any of those issues, I don't recommend the Heal Your Headache diet. And this is because most people go on it and they don't see a difference and they just stay on it forever. This is going to
didn't work for me.
Yeah, it's going to cause gut dysbiosis, which is basically gut imbalances. That's going to spike your anxiety even more, because now you're not making serotonin in your gut. We need to be eating tons of plants, lean meat. We need to be eating good carbs, and to be eating all of the good, nice food groups we have, right? Proteins, carbs, fat, eat them all in moderation. There's no such thing
I
as
found that the more colourful my diet was, the
better you
better.
feel.
I
Yeah.
changed my diet in 2016 and I went vegan actually fairly recently. The last 2 years I've been vegan. But the plant-based thing was really the big turning point for me.
Yeah.
And actually the one ingredient meals, and also the food, sorry, one ingredient foods, and you know, just eating non-processed.
Yeah, non-processed. And I know you said you're vegan.
Salt.
If that works for you, that's great. Salt for Meniere's disease, not so great, even though the research on that is terrible and actually not real at all. They say some people say it helps anyways. I mean, the research on Meniere's disease is horrendous. But for people with vestibular migraine, you should be okay with salt. But it's a live and learn kind of a thing. If you're like, I ate so much salt and it dehydrated me, or I held too much water or whatever, that's an issue. But for most people, salt in moderation is fine. Everything in moderation. Now, I know you said you're vegan and that works for you. That's awesome. I would say most people, it's not going to work for. So like lean meat and good vegetables, stuff like that. Awesome. In the fiber fuel book, it will convince you to only eat vegetables. You don't necessarily have to listen to that. I listened to that book. I freaking loved it. I increased my plants to 30 a week, like 30 different plants a week, and I still eat meat and I feel great. So that's one thing to do. The second part of anxiety is something you might need to hire a therapist to help you with. But we also do a lot of this in vestibular group fit, and there's just not enough therapists to go around for people with vestibular disorders. I do have a couple of favorites. Rooted Behavioral Education on Instagram and Gen Wellness Therapy are my favorite. Oh, and then Kate Schwab's Somatics. She's fantastic as well. And being able to sit with your symptoms, which is something the book that I mentioned earlier, The Way Out, goes along with a lot, and not be afraid of your symptoms is step one. And it is so hard.
Yeah.
We need to understand that dizziness is an alarm signal in our head. Dizziness is not there to hurt us. It's actually there to protect us. It's a protection mechanism. It's just the same as when you put your hand on a hot stove and go, oh my God, and get your hand off that stove super fast. That's a warning signal, right? That's not your brain going, oh my God, you're terrible, you're the worst, yada, yada, yada. It's a warning signal. You're going to burn your skin. So dizziness is the same. It's saying, hey, this thing might make us dizzy. It made us dizzy last time. We shouldn't do it again. And then you avoid this. My post on this yesterday was about this. Then we avoid this. And then next time you're like, hey, I might get near the car, dizziness. Hey, that made us dizzy. We had a panic attack last time. We're not going to do that. You walk away from the car, your brain is right. So every time that you can get closer in a really small, very safe way, remind your brain you're safe, do breathing exercises, because breathing is the fastest way, and it's free, to calm down our nervous system. Now, again, we're talking about brain chemistry, right? So we want to increase dopamine, increase serotonin. That's more reasons to get outside, get vitamin D, to exercise every day, to see other people, don't isolate yourself, things like this, which I know all of those things are hard. But in general, that's what we're talking about. And then sometimes an SSRI, and SSRI is actually the gold standard for triple PD treatment, and they get a lot of a bad rap. But an SSRI or an SNRI, so those are your antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, TCAs as well, could just as easily be called anti-migraine medications as they could be called antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds. And that's something that we really kind of need to wrap our heads around. You only need a fraction of the dose that you would take for anxiety and depression for migraine. And that's for a lot of reasons we don't have to get into, but you only need a small dose. And so you actually just want to change your brain chemistry. And some people can do that with diet and exercise and seeing people and going back to work and doing this and doing that. And some people are like, I cannot get there. And some of that is genetic.
That's where I was.
Great.
When I was on an
Take
SSRI.
medication. I am so pro meds. I can't prescribe them, but my patient's like, what do you think about this one, this one, and this one? And we weigh the options and we say, maybe this one's the best one for you. Now we have to get back to number needed to treat, because you're probably going to have to try more than one.
Yeah.
And when you fail the first one, you did not fail anything. The medication failed you, you move on. It doesn't mean every SNRI is not going to work for you. It doesn't mean every SSRI isn't going to work for you. It means this one specific medication at this one dose didn't work. You can reduce the dose. You can try a baby dose. You can try a different version of the same medication. They're all different. It's like taking different sides of the same coin, right? an SSRI is an SSRI, but they don't have patents on each other, right? They can't all get the same patent, so they have to change a little bit here, tweak there. These amazing chemists are doing this, and we give all of these things a bad rap because we're like, big pharma is bad. Big pharma is the reason we live for so long. And there's a lot of problems with big pharma, but it's also the reason we live for so long these days. And so we have to kind of take a step back and say, okay, I'm doing all of these things really well. I'm eating super well, I'm exercising, I'm doing my breathing, I'm doing my meditation, I don't stress out so much, I take breaks from screen time, I wear my Avalux glasses, I don't wear sunglasses inside, I do this, I do that, I do 150,000 things a day, and I'm still dizzy. It's time for a med. And that's okay. You didn't fail. Just because other people exist on the internet without medications doesn't mean if you take a medication, you're a bad person.
I totally agree with that, because I mean, I was on 4 medications for an SSRI, and I mean, I got the first one, I got used to it because I was on it for 4 years, but they were like a plaster for my brain. It was like to help me heal. Because I was so chronic.
Totally.
And I literally, now I know that was the time I was fighting. I don't want to go on medication. But you know, even now, being medication free for 4 years, I came on medication, but I wouldn't even think twice about going back on it if I went chronic again.
Right. No problem.
Would have no problem. And nortriptyline was quite good for me, but would have no problem going back on it.
Yeah. And some people are like, don't go on nortriptyline, it's the worst med ever. And you're like, it was great, it worked perfect for me.
But it's so different, isn't it? It's
so different. Your brain chemistry is not my brain chemistry. This person's body is not that person's body.
And also I felt that it took a few months for the medication.
Everyone's like, I couldn't sleep the one night I took it. People like, the first night I took it, I couldn't sleep. I'm never taking that again. It's gonna take a couple weeks for your body to get used to it. It's gonna take, I know it sounds like I'm like, you have to do this. I sound like an angry lady. I'm just very like, this is my soapbox, because there's just whatever in the world works for you. If you're like, I jump up and down 10 times in the morning, and then I take an ice bath, and then I go do this, and I feel great, do it. If you're like, I wake up in the morning, and if I jumped up and down, I would feel like crying, so I take my medication. Sweet. What's wrong with that? Literally nothing. Your brain chemistry is your brain chemistry. And if something is going wrong with your brain chemistry, these like holistic naturopathic things are not always or usually going to fix them. We have these meds because they work. And often taking them for a year or so and gives you wiggle room to get everything else in order. It gives you wiggle room to have the ability to cook for yourself so you can eat better. It gives you wiggle room to start to exercise so you can exercise consistently.
It gives you breathing space, doesn't it? Really.
To do all these things. And then all of a sudden you have so much wiggle room, and you're able to do all these things, your threshold's here, and you can say, okay, it's time for me to wean off of this. And then you slowly wean off of it, and you still can stay consistent with these things. If you take nortriptyline for a year and do nothing else to change and stop taking nortriptyline, your threshold's going back down. But if you take nortriptyline for a year and you get all these other amazing building blocks in order, and then say, okay, I'm going to really slowly taper this down month by month. It's going to take me a couple months. That's okay. And I'm going to have a little bit of symptoms in between each time I drop. That's okay. Right.
I think it took me 6 months to come down.
Yep. And a lot of people I have a patient who stopped cold turkey.
I've done that before.
And it doesn't work.
Didn't go well.
Totally.
My consultant at the time, or doctor, I can't remember who it was at the time, it was quite early on, said, oh, you can just stop taking that. And I stopped taking it. I was, oh my goodness, I had to have an ECG because my heart went to palpitations. I had all sorts of nausea, sickness. I literally, it was awful. And ever since then, I've gone so slowly in increments of like breaking the pills.
Totally. That's what you should do.
I don't want to take any more of your time up. And I think it's just been amazing. And there's so many more questions, but we'll deal with that.
We'll find another time to do it.
I know, but thank
you guys. Of course, I did make you guys a discount code for group.
Oh, so thank you.
The discount code is Dizzy Mummy.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
DYMUMMY. And that's for $15 off 3 months. Just so everyone knows.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that. That's very generous.
Of course, it's my
We'll
pleasure.
get all these details up on the post when I do it. So people can find your group fit through your Instagram link, your website.
My website, my Instagram.
Just tell me what your website is again.
thevertigodoctor.com. It's the Vertigo Doctor everywhere. Thevertigodoctor.com, youtube.com/@thevertigodoctor, Instagram @thevertigodoctor, Twitter, the Vertigo Doc. I don't use it a lot. TikTok, the Vertigo Doctor. It's literally the Vertigo Doctor or some shortened version.
And are you on Threads?
I am. I don't know how to use it yet, but I'm on there.
Another platform.
Another thing to use. I know. Oh my God. Anyways, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for having me and for listening to me rant for an hour. It's my favorite thing to do.
It's so helpful, and there's been so much out of that. People will really find it very helpful. Thank you ever so much.
Of course, remember your life is not over because you have a vestibular disorder. It's okay. You're gonna be okay. It's gonna get better. Talk to you guys soon.